You can.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Form 3s, good morning once again. I welcome you back from the 2-week recess, and we are resuming our lessons. Of course, last week we could not meet because we started the lesson on Wednesday, but here I am today to take you through composition writing. Before we reach to that level, we shall remind ourselves the components of English, as we always do. We always remind ourselves so that you put it in your mind. Paper 1 is basically composition. Here we have section A. You compose something based on functional writing. It's a functional writing skill. There are so many skills, like we have always told in class, but so far on this online platform, we have looked at 2. We looked at the recipe, we looked at writing minutes. There are many others that are going to come as long as the program continues, and even when we get back to class, we will study many skills. Then section B, here it is stories. Story writing. We have argumentative pieces. We have discussions. Plus other types of writing. Then paper 2, in brief, you have summary, you'll have comprehension, you'll have grammar. So that is the brief layout of our papers. So today's focus is on paper 1. And in paper 1, we're going to handle just one bit of section B. We're going to handle this aspect, section B. We're going to look at one aspect of section B, which is narrative writing. So you will recall that when we started on learning this year, Mr. Aliku took you through some simple aspects of how to come up with a story. Remember that lesson was on a Friday morning. Those of you who attended will recall. So I want us to carry on the idea from there. When my other colleagues join me in future, they will also give you more input. So in brief, what do we mean when we talk about narrative writing? Well, narrative writing is the type of story or is the type of writing in which we tell a story. We use it to tell a story. So what type of stories must we tell? It is something you compose or make up. It may not have to be factual, but you'll have to make it up. So it involves narrating, it involves recounting. Recounting means recalling an experience, or it involves retelling an experience. And it is normally in the past. It is told in the past simple tense. So each time you're writing a story, think about the past simple tense. Do not use present simple tense. Consistently use past tense. And when we talk of past tense, you might use past simple. And as you grow and you start getting more experience, you can add past continuous. You can add the past perfect tenses. But the bottom line is that your story must be in the past tense. So that said, we should also know that when dealing with narrative writing, the most important factor that we look at is how do you develop your language. How do you use your language in narrative writing? What do I mean? Remember, as you are coming up with a story, you're writing something, you're writing a piece of around 500 words, 600 words, maybe 450 words. You need to have a good command of vocabulary. And this is what we mean by language use. But from the simplest of steps, let us know that when you write a sentence in English, in a story, you will need to modify. Modify means to make in composition, modify means to make an improved change in your sentence construction. I'll be explaining this shortly. So how are we going to modify? We modify using modifiers. What are the modifiers in use? We have adjectives, we shall explain. We have adverbs. Those are the two major ones. There are also other elements that we use which are not necessarily adjectives and adverbs. Of course, right from your primary school, you'll recall you are told that adjectives describe words that describe nouns. You might have a shirt. You say, I'm wearing a shirt. Am I communicating? Are you getting the picture of the shirt I'm wearing? You cannot. You need to add some description. So you can say it is a blue and white striped shirt. You can say it is a long sleeved blue and white striped shirt. Now, if you look at yourself, start constructing in your brain. What garment are you wearing? How would you communicate to a reader? Suppose you're writing your composition. You say you're wearing a t-shirt, but what kind of t-shirt? You say it is a silk t-shirt, or a cotton t-shirt, polyester t-shirt. It is black and red in color. It is colorless. You might say, I'm wearing a beautiful flowered dress. Look at where you're seated. You might be in your living room. You're seated on maybe, let's say, a crimson coach. You might be saying that you ate while standing on your comfortable bed. That is an example of an adjective. There are so many adjectives you can think of. Kind, expensive, thin, little, tiny, etc., smart. You name it. You cannot have a limit. But what is important is that for every word you come up with, try to add, for every noun you come up with, try to come up with an adjective to accompany it. That is the way you are going to improve on your composition. I've talked about adjectives. We also have adverbs. Adverbs describe nouns, they describe adjectives, they also describe other adverbs. That is their role. For example, there are many types of adverbs. There are adverbs of time, there are adverbs that tell you, we call them adverbs of manner. How do you do something? Let me give you a simple example. Let's say I moved to class. I found students sleeping. That is an ordinary statement. It's not communicating in terms of giving you a clearer picture. So I would expect you to say how you moved. You can say, I moved slowly. Slowly is an adverb to class. I found my students. Maybe you can add another adverb there, lazily sleeping. So these two adverbs here show how something is. How exactly is that thing that you're describing? You can say, He ran a race fast. When you say he ran a fast race, fast becomes an adjective. But when you say he ran a race fast, fast becomes an adverb. How was the race run? We are going to look at more as we progress. This is just a basic introduction. So, like I told you, after using adjectives and adverbs, there are other things that we look at in composition writing, especially the narrative and descriptive types. We look at, apart from the adjectives and adverbs, which are vocabularies, we look at other sorts of vocabulary use. You'll have a plain word, you improve it with a new word. When you're writing compositions, try to, as much as possible, you make use or utilize new words. Don't use these everyday words which are common to all, which people call the English of ease and words. You look at a boy, you look at a girl, okay? But remember that right from nursery school, you were exposed to these words. Some of you, even before you went to school, you could hear your elder brothers or sisters or cousins speaking these words. But move a step further. I'll just give you one example. A boy can be a lad. A girl can be a lass. But then these are not the only ones. You can get many others. So each time in the same composition, you might refer to the same boy more than 5 times, but keep on transiting or changing from one noun to another form of the noun. If in the first paragraph you talk of a boy, the next paragraph talk of a lad, the next paragraph talk of another word that means the same as lad, which I will encourage you to discover on your own, because if I start discussing them here, we shall not complete our topic. But I just want to give you the basic idea. Do the same for here. If you think of word like sky, can you think of another word? You can have firmament. Okay. You're talking of noise. What sort of noise? You can have what you call cacophony. So all these are nouns, but remember that as you develop these nouns, I said you should also add adjectives plus adverbs to your sentence. That is how you are going to develop your compositions. There are other techniques, of course, which you've been practicing with, but just to remind you, since you've been out of class now for some time, is that in narrative writing and also in descriptive writing, as part of vocabulary building, we make use of idioms. Use idioms. Idioms are special expressions. Idioms are special expressions that you use to construct. For example, if you want to say he ran fast is ordinary English. You might use, say say he ran fast as he escaped. So you say he took to his heels at lightning speed. Lightning speed refers to the pace. Taking to his heels means the escaping. And remember the beginning we said as we write, we use the past simple tense. You can see I've used a noun which is in the past tense, a verb sorry, which is in the past simple tense. You can have other idioms like you can say to take up arms. Of course, this one you turn it to the past tense when you're narrating. It simply means to start fighting. We took up arms against the government. We went to fight the government. You can say she always sits on the fence. What does the idiom mean here, sitting on the fence? It means unable or unwilling to take sides. When you're in an argument or in a debate, you don't want to side with any other group, you want to remain neutral. We say you are sitting on the fence. So as you are learning how to write idioms will be important to use. Then as we wind up this section, of course, there are other aspects of vocabulary which we call, we shall learn more of them in the very near future. But of course, you've been encountering them probably without knowing what they are. We call them phrasal verbs. We call them phrasal verbs. I'll not define phrasal verbs for you, but it's a type of construction composed of a phrase plus a verb. For example, here you will have a common noun. Here you will have let's call it a common verb, not noun. Here you will have a phrasal verb. Here you will say stay calm. Here you will say calm down. Here you will say stay with. Here you will say put up with. That is an example of a phrasal verb. Maybe think of the common one, to die. Here you will say pass away. So those are just three types of phrasal verbs, but again they have to do with language development. Okay? Lastly, you can be talking to someone. You talk to your friend and say, see, I'm trying to make friends with the other guy, but he's simply ignoring me all the time. Well, we know what it means to ignore. But as you are marking your compositions, we'll consider that an ordinary word. But it is it as a phrasal verb. And you say, he gave me a cold shoulder. Or you can say, he cold shouldered me. To my anger or to my pain. All these are examples of some of phrasal verbs. Then you may also use other aspects of vocabulary, aspects like similes. You learn them in your Form 1 and Form 2 literature, I believe. Here you'll be using comparison. You compare something using these two words, like, or, as. You can say Dan is as cunning as a fox. Then you go to give the example or the explanation why you have considered him to be cunning. This is an example of a simile. You can say his bravery is like that of a lion. Consider him to be very brave. He's as brave as a lion. We have used similes. That's another technique of writing adjectives. I mean of writing narrative stories. And finally, in this demonstration, we can use proverbs. Use proverbs in your sentences or wise sayings. Think of sayings or proverbs that are appropriate to the story you're describing, that can fit in very well in what you are saying. Okay? After, you can, for example, say, I decided to dive in the water with my clothes to save the drowning man. I didn't have time to remove my clothes. I decided to dive with the clothes, with everything, with the pocket money, everything. Talk about it, the phone. There was no time. So I decided to dive into the water, dressed as I was, because after all, then you quote the proverb. It is said that a stitch in time saves 9. You quote that proverb. And say, after all, every silver cloud has its own lining. That is another example of the proverb. So I think this is part of the basic introduction to our narrative writing composition, how to improve narrative writing composition. So next, on our screen, we have, I have attempted to share some documents. As you can see, so I'll put for you examples of adjectives to modify the nouns, the adjectives to modify the adverbs, modify the verbs, etc. I've given you 3 basic comparisons. What are these comparisons here? Look at the first sentence. They cheered him on arrival. It's very plain. It's very flat. Of course, we start imagining they cheered him. Yes, they may be excited to have him. They are happy. But then look at how it is compared. They cheered him on arrival. Compare it with the second, with the example given. We have talked of a thundering cheer welcomed him. Now, what is the thunder here? When you see the word thunder or you hear the word thunder, what comes to mind? Of course, when it's going to rain heavily, you always have thunder and it's normally very loud. So here, a thundering cheer welcomed him simply means that he was received with very loud cheers from the audience. He was received with very loud cheers. So already the picture is created in your mind. So in the sentence is completed by saying a thundering cheer welcomed him as he made his way, or he made a majestic entry. Look at those adjectives. A majestic. Majestic has to do with royalty. It is grand. It is not a simple entry. He entered like a dignitary, like a royal. Okay? Where did he go? Into the beautifully decorated venue. You see that? I'm using adjectives. Look at the sentence that follows. You can simply say it was an occasion I attended. Well, it doesn't show you the picture. It doesn't give you the picture in the mind. What type of occasion? So I've added a simple adjective. I've called it a solemn. I attended the solemn occasion. So why was it solemn? In your description, in your explanation, you'll have to make that occasion solemn by describing what transpired. I've added a simple adjective there. Third example. He is planning to organize a wedding. Yes, all our relatives organizing weddings. And what sort of wedding? Look at the comparison. You can say he's planning to organize a glamorous wedding. So what is this glamorous? Glamorous comes from glamour. So what is glamour? It is grand. It is big. Okay. Maybe it is expensive in nature. It's going to attract all sorts of people whom you consider celebrities in your society. That's what will make the wedding glamorous. It might have to do with the attire that the people are going to wear. It might have to be with the venue that you're taking these people to. It's not a simple hall, but it might be a venue that can accommodate 10,000 people and you host all of them. It might be plenty of delicious food, sumptuous meals as you call them. All that, you'll have to put it in explanation of what the glamorous wedding is like. I hope I am understood there. So all those are adjectives that we have used. Now in the next segment, I'm illustrating the use of adverbs so that you understand them better. A simple sentence given is, I asked my wife to help me. Do you get the picture? When I tell you that I asked my wife to help me, it's an ordinary thing. But what was I going through? I've said I hesitant. Hesitant is from the word hesitant. Okay? Then you can say timidly. I was full of fear. So here I'm building a picture in the mind of the reader. You start asking yourself as you read my composition, why was he afraid? What had he done? What had happened? Okay? I timidly and hesitantly asked my uneasy wife. When my wife saw my behavior, she now became uneasy. Uneasy is an adjective. The words bolded in black are the adverbs. Uneasy becomes an adjective. Look at the second sentence. She walked to the door without making a sound and with a lot of care. Now, how do you move without making a sound? It means that you are moving quietly. Quietly is an adverb, but I've noticed quietly in my sentence, I've said I tiptoed. Tiptoed is the verb. I've used another word for moving quietly. I tiptoed. But how did I tiptoe? Stealthily. Stealthily means without being noticed, easily, and cautiously. I exercise caution. Cautiously as taking a lot of care as I also tiptoed. Okay? So where was I going? I didn't simply walk to the door, but I'm describing the door. It was a mahogany door. Of course, I had a wooden, but mahogany also is a type of wood. Are we together? Then she switched on the light just as I entered. I'm using an adverb there, hardly. Hardly is an adverb of time. As soon as I arrived, he switched on the light. Hardly had I entered the room, he switched on the dazzling lights. I put an adjective, the dazzling lights. Their faces grew sad. Well, sad is, grew is a verb. Sad proverb is an adjective, but that is common everyday English. The simple improvement you can make, you describe how the faces were before and what they became after. Their bright faces suddenly grew somber. You see that? Their faces suddenly grew somber. Look at the next segment. I passed a group who were laughing. A group of pupils who were laughing. That is ordinary, everyday English, the English of is and was. Whereas you can also say, I sauntered. Sauntered is to make a slow movement. You walk maybe lazily. You walk quietly, noiselessly. So I sauntered calmly. I've used another verb, not a common word, to replace pass. Then I've added an adverb, calmly. I'm also saying past a group of pupils. I've described the pupils by using the adjective indolent. Past indolent pupils who were laughing. How were they laughing? I've given you an adverb. They were laughing noisily and heartily. So in that sentence, you see that the first example, the plain or the flat example, has about 9 words only. I passed a group of pupils who were laughing. The next sentence, which is comparing it and bettering it, has more than 9 words. I've used a total of about 15, from 9 to 15. So that is how you should strive to build up your sentence construction when you're writing narrative writing. That is how you modify your sentences, by making good use of adjectives, making good use of adverbs, and also finding alternatives to the common or everyday verbs. Of course, not to forget what we said in introduction, you will add idioms, you will add similes, you will add proverbs, etc. So there is so much to do with how you use your language. Look at the next. My neighbor's wife was big with fat cheeks. Of course, because I've used the adjectives, you get the picture clear, isn't it? But then you can make it more clear how big, how fat. Look at the next sentence. My neighbor's wife was an awesome. Awesome means very great. Okay? Maybe inspiring fear in you. Okay? Voluptuous. You are describing the shape of your neighbor's wife. These women, they call curvaceous or being curvy. That's what we meant by voluptuous. Then wench. The first meaning of wench can mean a young lady. So my neighbor's wife was a young lady who was curvaceous, but who inspired a lot of fear, and whose cheeks were chubby. Chubby to be well-rounded cheeks. Those cheeks of people who are properly fed, people who constantly take a lot of milk, isn't it? So that is just a simple description. So now you can start thinking about the people in your home. How are you going to describe each one of them using adjectives? How are you going to describe them using adverbs? The way they walk, the way they talk, okay? The way they behave in public and in private. That is your homework. When you leave the lesson, start thinking how you can improve. Play around with words and see. By the time you get back to school, you would have improved. Don't just look at the people at home. Start thinking about your deskmates in class or your neighbors in class. What is their behavior like? How are they like? Can you describe them to a friend using such adjectives and adverbs? Can you think of new verbs and new nouns? Well, the ball is in your court. The next segment is how to open our narrative stories. How can we begin a story? Beginning a story can be both very easy and very hard, but there are some ideas that we may pick from the demonstration we have here. One way of beginning a story is by using dialogue. A dialogue is a conversation. You can open by making someone speak. Might be speaking to someone else. I've called it a dialogue. Of course, dialogue has to engage more than one person, but it can as well also be a monologue. You might start a story where someone is talking to himself or herself. Someone may be talking to himself or herself. So how do we give this dialogue? From the example I gave, part A, Biamagero, Biamagero, my son, she exclaimed. How could you have possibly done this? She frantically and hysterically cried out. She was frantic, she was desperate, she was hysterical. Means that she was losing her calm. What had Biamagero done? That is now what your composition is going to bring out. That is just an introductory sentence in the first paragraph. B, you might start by describing the setting. Setting means where, let's say where something takes place. Or it might be not about the where, but also about the when. So if you open your story in the night, that is setting. If you open your story in a village, that is the setting. So the example I've given, she sat on a velvet couch in her vast, opulent living room. The setting is the sitting room, but I've described some of the furniture there. She sat on a velvet couch in her vast, opulent living room, entirely masked. Masked means to be covered by the darkness of the night, with a sharp knife in her clenched fist, ready to pounce. She's holding a knife in her fist. She's ready to pounce. To pounce on whom? You start asking yourself. She's seated in darkness. Why is she in the dark? Then the explanation comes. Intense thoughts, meaning serious and many thoughts were running through her mind. Her heart palpitating at an escalating rhythm. What is happening here? But you can build the picture from the verbs, adjectives, and adverbs used. It was 2:00 in the morning. Her husband had not yet returned home. Where could he be? She wondered. So what do you think will happen once the husband arrives and knocks on the door? Of course, this lady is holding a knife. She may not give him a chance to explain. Maybe in your next paragraph, you will show the wife stabbing the man and start blaming him for always coming back home late. Then, the third one is description of character. If you don't use dialogue, you don't use by describing the place where the story is taking place, you can use an individual who participates in the story. You may mention the main character or any other character. Kanyerezi is the person we are describing in our story, was a well-known soccer wizard. Well, the wizard is a magician. So what does it have to do with soccer? It means that he's very good at football. He has skills like those of a wizard. Tricks, footballing skills. A well-known soccer wizard throughout the entire Rwenzori region. His fame stemmed from his dazzling runs, magical dribbles, and his admirable ability to outwit his gigantic opponents and move the ball effortlessly past huge forests of legs, diminutive as he was. I will explain that briefly. We have said that Canyeres was a soccer wizard, so what makes him a soccer wizard? He became famous because he used to have amazing runs. Whenever he would run with the ball, he would run with an amazing speed. He could easily dodge his opponents. Those are the magical dribbles. Then the spectators were always admirable of him because the boy was very small, but he could outwit, or he could always trick the opponents who were much bigger than him. And when we're describing the forest of legs, it means that he would be able to dodge or dribble the ball past very many legs. That is what we describe as forests of legs. Of course, I've said diminutive means that he was very tiny. So that's an example of how you can build on character. Describe the individual. That's an opening paragraph from the story. But in it, you can as well describe more of the same character using different words in the subsequent paragraphs. Then D, you might think of an idea. The idea might be in the question. Okay? It might be the question might be narrate a story about when you fell in trouble. So it's come up with an idea. What kind of trouble? You've heard of, maybe you might have heard of a magical tree, or a tree of which is in a certain forest in your tradition, in your culture, or in a simple story. Like the example I've given here. I'm quoting what my teacher mentioned years back when I was in school. My teacher said, never touch the Musamba tree in Chidera forest. I recalled the words of my teacher years back, but did not explain why he told us not to touch that tree. On that foggy Tuesday morning, or instead of using the weather, you can say on that fateful day, I set out for Kamuli, where Chidera was, determined to touch the mysterious tree. So I've opened your story. What follows, you now know. The teacher has warned us not to touch it. For me, I'm determined to touch it. So what will happen? That is what you are going to explain in the subsequent paragraphs. Give us the consequences in a dramatic way. Are we together? Then when you're describing an event, you can talk of a birth of a baby or the death of a baby. Okay? Here, the description I've given is 2 days after his burial, we woke up in shock after it was discovered that his body was found in quotes. After we had discovered that his body was found sound asleep in his own bed and bedroom, which he had left for the living. Here's the man you had buried him 2 days ago. Then 2 days later, you wake up, you find him sleeping in his bed. What happens? So now you have to make the story dramatic. Build on the idea of the event that you have described. Well, the next table is just a demonstration we'll call it building blocks. Building blocks of a composition. What do I mean by building blocks? When you talk of building blocks of a composition, it is simply you hatch out a plan of how the story will flow. So I've given you subheadings. You talk about the experience, you talk about the setting, you talk about the people involved, you talk about the feelings of the people in your story. What senses are you subjecting the reader to? What senses are you appealing to? Are the things you are describing talking about sense of touch? Are they talking about sense of smell? Are they talking about sense of maybe taste, etc.? Then, of course, another block, which should be part of your story, you should many times give us the consequence or the effect or the result on the characters, the effect of what is happening on the different characters. I've not illustrated that on the screen I've shared, but pay attention briefly. I want to read a few segments from a story in front of me here. We are saying here that Cavadoca, that is a name, was the summary of beauty. She was the summary of beauty that no man would pass her without cruelly giving his neck a going over, meaning that no, Cavadoca will not pass any man without that man looking her up and down, okay, because of the beauty that she has. Then look at how she's described. It is said that she walked with grace. She never seemed to be in a rush for anything. She lacked pace. That is, she was never speedy at any one time, but she always compensated it with intellect. We are describing the lady. She didn't have speed, but she had intelligence. Then look at the setting. We are told that unfortunately Cavadoca hailed from a humble family. She came from the poor village. You name the village. Her parents were a poor old couple who did their best to take her to school. Then here we are told as she runs out of fees, they look for ways of helping her. Why don't we try Semwanga? He will bail us out. It seemed like a wild suggestion, but they did not have an alternative. Look at how idioms are used. Because their hands were tied and their backs against the wall, they accepted Semwanga's proposal that he was willing to give them money to educate their girl as long as they gave her to him as his wife. So the parents had no choice. We are saying their backs were against the wall, their hands were tied. That is an example of an idiom. Then we are saying that everything he did had strings attached, but he was a man of his word. meaning that he always fulfilled what he said as long as he fulfilled his conditions. Look at the effect. I said the effect, what is in the building block? What was the result? We are told that Kabadoka's mind was clouded with the fact that Semwanga was not a man of her class. Remember, we said Kabadoka had intellectual intelligence. Semwanga was uneducated. He was too old for her. She would have preferred a young Adonis, her university coursemate. She started becoming uneasy and lost concentration in class. So that is an example of how the feelings are now impacting on her. What is the result of the fact that she didn't have fees? Her parents have given her away to a rich man. The rich man is older than her. The rich man is uneducated, but she's being forced to be his wife simply because the man is ready to sponsor her studies. Those are some of the kinds of feelings that you can bring up. Maybe after graduation there was a party. So how do we now appeal to the senses? Say there was this delicious aroma flowing in the air. You are now subjecting our taste buds. You talk of delicious. Delicious has to do with taste. We know that we're going to serve very tasty food. Okay? You can say the music from the loudspeakers assaulted our ears. It means you're now appealing to the sense of hearing. That is another building block. So in terms, simple terms, there is a lot to do with narrative writing. Okay?
Yes.
Using new words, vocabulary, using adjectives, using adverbs, using idioms, proverbs, while saying, etc. So this is basically what I had for this lesson in terms of the teaching and the demonstration. Now, for those who were not on yesterday, and for those who were on, you are aware that the platform has had an improvement made on it. There's a link for discussion. So I'll invite you to go to the discussion tab or the discussion button, click on it, and maybe we could share some issues. I could ask, you could ask, okay? Type your name, ask some questions, which I should try to answer in the remaining about 20 minutes. Anybody joining? How many participants are there? 72. Okay, so as I wait for you to join, maybe I could put down something small. As I walked Just giving a simple sentence. My heart flew off. Can you think of improving this using adjectives, adverbs? It is now your turn. I have done my work. I'm giving you that simple challenge. Try to improve the simple sentence. It was windy. As I walked, my heart flew off. What are you going to add to the descriptions? Mm-hmm. Any feedback from the discussion room?
There, but they are not talking.
People, can you please share your ideas with us? We need to hear from you. Yes, Mutesi? Mutesi, can you say something? Mutesi, you can click on the icon of the mic or the microphone and unmute. Then you say something. Don't hide. We can see you are there.
That is something.
Sanya is asking whether you can improve that very sentence. Yes. Sanya, it is the sentence on the board. Mutesi, are you coming on? Or we give a chance to another person? Mutesi, I can see you are hiding under your bed. Sanyu? Shonre? Shonre, will you be courageous, as brave as the lion, take up the mantle, improve the sentence? Okay. Let me ask my people here, any ideas? Or you can't think of a way? Think of what? How does the heart simply fly up? Imagine the wind doing something to it. There's something we didn't talk of, but which you also did some time back. There's the element of personification. Personification comes from personify. Personify means giving a non-living thing. A non-living thing, human characteristics. You make it behave like a human. So probably the first thing you would do here, you would say, personify the wind. So what will we say? You will say the wind grabbed. It grabbed my heart. Okay? So if it grabs the heart, what happens? And throw it into the gutter. This is very simple English. But of course, when you sit down and fight, you can improve this single sentence in very many ways. But this is just the beginning point. Are we together? Yes? Sanyu says, as I walked, my red bucket hat Flew off. Thank you for trying. And I believe you can push it further to another level. How does it fly? Because it sailed through the wind. Okay? You describe the speed. It flew like a thunderbolt off my bald head. You're giving an adjective. Anybody who is admitting? You unmute yourself and speak. Okay? I think it's now better. The noise quality was too much. Let me give you a second example, and I believe it may be one of the last. The woman says, as I walked, my heart was blown off by the wind and fell in the trench. Okay? So Sebulime, I think would have improved on the walking. How exactly did you walk? Okay? In what kind of trench did it fall into? Patrick Isaac Isota, as the wind blew, my heart took flight. That's a beautiful expression. And crashed in the trees. It flew towards the trees. It crashed in the trees. You can see how Isota has done it. His heart took flight. It was like an aeroplane. It ended up crashing in the trees. That is very good of you, Isaac. Keep it up. As we continue, I was saying there's this sentence I was trying to write here. It rained briefly. Where did it rain briefly? How briefly? Where does rain come from? That's the first question you should ask yourself. It comes from the sky. How does the sky bring rain? Personify it. Make it behave like a human being. Okay? Talk of the clouds. The pregnant cloud. Above our traditional home state. So you're expecting rain. The clouds are pregnant. Then you say, we panickingly removed the millet that had been put out to dry because you knew it would get wet. Panicking, you remove the millet that had been put out to dry, then you give the effect. However, what happened? You're expecting rain. You can say the firmament, remember I told you firmament is another word for sky, scornfully. This is where you are now personifying with a lot of scorn. It scornfully spat out, scornfully spat out a few drops. Scornfully spat out a few drops of rain. So I have personified the sky, I've personified it there, I've described the clouds, I've described our feelings. So that is the way to go. Mutesi, finally you are here. You personified the rain, you said it is sobbing. The rain cried into its sleeve, as quiet as a cat. The rain trudged along the sky, quietly jumping into a puddle. Okay. That is a very good description. You've tried to make good use of adjectives. You made use of adverbs. You're making use of personification. Thank you for trying, and keep it up. Never be shy to try. Well, I want to take it that we have done a lot. Keep on engaging yourselves in the chat room. Whenever we visit, we shall find something and maybe be able to respond to it. But we are running out of time. We may not be able to handle any other aspect. I thank you for paying attention, for sacrificing your time. I hope you will make the best use of these opportunities. Stay safe. Thank you for listening. Good day.